Okay, so the first episode of the new Vanguard series aired today. Yeah, I want to do a series where I talk about every episode of the show. I know what you're thinking. That's quite a hefty commitment, and that's why I'm not committing to it right now. Basically, I'm just gonna review each episode as they air and see how far we get. If I ever run out of things to talk about or think that each episode doesn't justify its own episode, I'll find another way around that or just stop. So don't expect me to make a video for every single episode or anything. I will probably just stop after a point. But for now, because, everyone's getting hyped about Vanguard and everything, because the third generation has started now, let's talk about each episode of Vanguard as it is. Again, this is very much a series that I'm making on a whim, so we're kind of sorting things out as we go. So yeah, let's talk about the new Vanguard. First of all, let's get some stuff out of the way as to not the actual content of the episode itself. The English dub finally got announced. Right as the episode aired, we got a trailer for the dubbed version of the series, and it looks like it has all the returning voice actors and stuff. That's great. I'll give an update when we find out when the dub starts airing. I was really hoping for simuldub. I was really hoping that the dub episode would come out on the same day as the subbed episode, but the dub is still behind by a couple of episodes, so maybe once the G-dub is finished, we'll get over to that. I am also fully caught up on Vanguard now. I've moved over to the Japanese version. I usually prefer the dub, and I do still prefer the dub, but in order to do this video series and everything, I was like, I may as well catch up in Japanese. And so I've seen the newest episode in Japanese with subtitles. Really glad the dub has been announced, because I still really like the dub, and I will catch up with the dub and everything, and maybe talk about the dub here and there in later episodes of this very series. But for the most part, we're going to be talking about the Japanese version, since, again, we don't actually have anything more than a trailer so far. Another thing I wanted to cover first, and maybe this is a bit of a weird thing to talk about, but I think it's really interesting, so I may as well mention it anyway, and that's the airing schedule. So, for anyone who doesn't know, at least as far as I'm aware, Vanguard up until this point has aired in Japan on TV at 6 AM on Sundays. That has been the airing schedule for Vanguard, and that's really early. That is a pretty bad time slot, honestly, because I can't imagine many people want to wake up that early in the day to watch a Vanguard episode. 7 AM maybe, but 6 AM, that's really early. Well, it's been changed, and I was like, oh cool, it's being changed to later in the day, maybe a couple of hours later to a more reasonable time when people are actually awake. Kinda. It's been moved, backwards by a few hours, so instead of airing on 6 AM on a Sunday, it's 9 PM on a Saturday, and that is an extremely drastic change. That is a really drastic change. 9 PM? Okay, I mean, maybe they're trying to aim at more of a mainstream crowd, because that is undeniably a much better time slot. But that's such a weird time slot for a card game anime, as far as I'm aware anyway. Again, I don't actually watch Japanese TV. I just watch the episodes online after they air. So I don't actually know, but that's such a weird time slot, because that's when adults and stuff are watching their stuff. So for a card game anime to be airing then, maybe Bushiroad really are trying to push this towards adults and stuff now. I mean, it doesn't look like this series is going to have any more blood or anything in it. We'll see, because this first episode was very kind of by the numbers in that regard. It was mainly exposition-focused episode, so we didn't really get any blood or violence or anything like that. We got one instance of violence, and said instance of violence was a little bit more violent than the episode it was remaking. But other than that, who knows? Time slot is interesting. I'm gonna go ahead and entirely assume the reason the time slot is where it is is more because Bushiroad are really trying to get everyone in on this one, and that's the thing. Because this is a remake and everything, and because it's in a much better time slot and all that other stuff, and they're simplifying the card game, this is going to be them trying to get everyone into it, and that's where I lead, amazingly, onto my next subject. If you are new to Vanguard, and you're watching this video, and you just don't even know what a Vanguard is or whatever, you're in safe hands here. Don't worry. This newest series is a remake, of the first series. So you don't have to know anything at all to fit in here. Of course, preferably you've actually seen the first episode if you're watching the review of the first episode. But yeah, you can start with the first, like the most recent episode of Vanguard. You could start there. In fact, I'd probably recommend you start there for now. Just because I feel that the very first story arc of Vanguard is extremely slow paced, and it kind of lost me a bit, and it wasn't really until Link Joker that it started getting really good. And from the looks of things, this series is probably going to be fixing a lot of those pacing issues. So yeah, if you're new here, that's fine. Welcome to Vanguard. It's an interesting franchise. I will recommend go back and watch the old anime afterwards, but yeah, start here for now. Why not? Let's get into the actual episode. I was really impressed. This episode gave me everything I wanted. At least for a remake of the first episode. It gave me the announcement of the English dub, which was something I really wanted, and it gave me Rekka. In my video about the announcement of this anime, I was very concerned because they hadn't showed or mentioned Ultra Rare, and I thought that was a bit weird because they got a different idol group, Rosalia, to do the opening theme, and it's like, but Vanguard already has an idol group, so what? But Ultra Rare are back. They're in this first episode, and they even get a speaking role. So that's great. I'm really happy with that. I really like Rekka. Yeah, I'm really glad they're back. Hopefully they'll get a really big role later on in the story. And in the original Vanguard they do. So, and even in the manga, Korin does. So yay, Ultra Rare for me. I like Ultra Rare. So that's another thing to tick off the list. In terms of other aspects, the animation is obviously better. This is like 6 years or so after the first episode actually aired, so of course the animation is going to be better. It's OLM who did the Pokemon anime. Well, they're the ones that always did Vanguard, but they're still doing it now, and they've been doing good stuff with Pokemon Sun and Moon, and they've been doing pretty good stuff with this too. So this episode started off with the flashback of Aichi getting his card from Kai and everything, and I really like how, like, the best thing about this remake so far is how they've kind of tweaked things together, because now they have the benefit of hindsight, so they can kind of like tweak things together a bit better. This time, in the flashback, Kai challenges Aichi to a card fight, and Aichi gets nervous and refuses and runs away, but gets given Blaster Blade anyway, which I really, really liked, because in the original version, he just gets given the Blaster Blade by Kai, and then that's it. So I really like the addition of him being challenged to a card fight whilst being given the Blaster Blade, and him refusing. That ties into the rest of the events of this first episode really, really nicely. I like that a lot. Because that means we've already had a little bit of character development for Aichi so far. Because, of course, this episode ends with Aichi challenging Kai to a card fight. Another thing I really liked was the ending theme for this episode. I mean, I wasn't the biggest fan of the world of the song, but the visuals are pretty cool looking. And I loved this ending theme had Koji Ibuki in it. That's what I want from this remake. Now that they have the benefit of hindsight, they can work stuff in like that much better. When they introduced Koji Ibuki in Neon Messiah, and we're like, oh yeah, he's been friends with Kai for years, I was like, oh okay, that's a bit out of nowhere. Like, how come we've never mentioned him so far? He was the one that originally owned Blaster Blade? Like, okay. I mean, I can buy it, but like, why has no one mentioned Koji Ibuki so far? Now we have mentioned him. Again, I really hope they do the same thing with Shin Nita. Again, in G, they mentioned that Shin Nita was part of this like really well-known and popular like card fighting team. And it comes out of nowhere because Shin Nita is a really important character in the first Vanguard as well, and they never mentioned that he's actually good at card fighting. And so I was like, oh, okay. And again, hopefully this remake will be able to tie that stuff in a lot nicer and neater. You know, just kind of like, because of a long-running show, you don't know what direction it's going to be going in the long run, unless you're One Piece. And so it's difficult to kind of foreshadow everything correctly, but now that they have the benefit of hindsight and they know what they're doing, now we should be able to kind of have everything be a little bit neater. Again, it's just the way everything's written is so much tighter and neater and better paced as well. Because whilst this episode covered around about the same amount of ground as the version of the episode that it was remaking, with this episode again, it just felt a lot tighter and neater. And if the rest of this series can do this, then that's cool. I mean, again, that's still not enough to warrant a remake, in my opinion. I still hope that in a few episodes' time, they really split off, because this first episode, again, it kind of added little things here and there, but there was no real, like, big change so far. Again, the biggest change was Koji Ibuki, and he was in the ending theme, and most people just skip the ending theme. So, you know, like, so far, we're pretty, like, story beat for story beat the same, except we're just kind of changing each beat slightly. Speaking of beating, Aichi gets beaten up in this episode, and in the original Vanguard, he just gets Blaster Blade taken by Morikawa. But in this episode, no, he gets beaten up, and he gets bruised, and he's, like, limping his way to Card Capital, and I'm like, ooh, they're taking advantage of that new time slot, aren't they? They get to show real violence. Yeah, I mean, again, that was cool. It kind of added a lot to what Aichi was going through, and you could really sympathize with him when he challenges Kai to a duel on a whim. I really liked that. I really liked that Miwa was the one that beat Morikawa. I really liked... Card Capital is different now, and at first I was like, oh, I don't know if I like that or not. But yeah, Card Capital is different now, the building, and I think I like the new building because it looks so bad, and that's a good thing, because again, throughout all of Vanguard, the original series in G, you see Card Capital become like a progressively better shop as time goes on. Like each story arc, like it'll get little tweaks and improvements, and then by the time you get to G, it has a second store and it looks amazing. And it kind of helps show you how Vanguard has progressed in universe. And so I really liked how in this one, Card Capital starts off as an absolute shithole that no one likes. It's such a boring, drab, empty, grey building, and I love that, because that means that when it does progress, it like and when like Vanguard becomes more popular and they have more money to like put back into the shop again, and improve its looks and everything, that means that we'll actually see the difference way better this time. Because honestly, even in the very first Vanguard, in the very first episode that this is remaking, Card Capital still looks pretty cool. I'm like, I'd hang out there. But this time, it's like, no, this is a shithole. You come here to play Vanguard, and that's it. Another thing I liked is Misaki is a lot harsher in this episode. Again, in the first episode, she looked very kind of uninterested and didn't really care. In this episode, she is constantly yelling at people to shut up, which I love. I think that fits her character way better, because she's just like constantly telling everyone off. I think that does fit Misaki's character better. I really like that. And yeah, there's not much else to really say. I mean, again, there is like the new like game mechanic and everything, but we haven't really seen that yet. So, because again, this episode like stops, this episode finishes and goes to be continued. Like the second the card game, the second the card fight actually starts. We are going with the tutorial again. I love the tutorial. I would have been mad if they skipped out the tutorial this time, especially since this series looks like it's so heavily aimed at beginners. And yeah, I think that's going to be where I stop for today, because there was a lot to say. There was a surprising amount to say about this episode, and to be fair, I didn't even really go into much depth, but that's the cool thing about this being a series where I talk about this episode by episode, because with my original Vanguard video, the one that has like 10,000 views now, which is far too many views though, jeez, in that one I feel like I skipped past a lot of details and stuff, because I was talking about like the entirety of the original Vanguard in one video. and so I felt like I skipped past a lot of things far too quickly. There were a lot of like subjects and stuff that I wanted to talk about, but I couldn't find a good way of fitting them into the script. But with this, if we're talking about every single episode, well, most episodes, again, I'd imagine I'm probably going to get to the point where I'm skipping quite a few in future and only like talking about like the really important episodes. But for now that we're talking about most of the episodes in detail, I can talk about everything that I want to talk about in that original video. And again, when the English dub does start, I will start talking about the English dub and everything like that too. I will probably eventually, by the end of this, cover everything I've ever wanted to talk about Vanguard. So I think right now, like, we're already 16 minutes in. But yeah, there's already so much to talk about, so I'm really excited to see episode 2 and get more into kind of like nitty gritty of the card game itself. Because again, we didn't really see much of the card game in this episode, which I thought was good. I like that. I really like it when card game anime don't feel the need to force the card game itself into every single episode. And so starting this one off without a card fight and having it go to be continued right as the card fight starts, I thought that was a really cool idea. I'm pretty sure the original Vanguard did that too. Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to more of this. Like, because again, when it was first announced, I was a little bit disappointed. Because it was just a remake. And I still stand by that. I would still prefer to see a completely new anime with new characters and stuff, but still Vanguard, you know? I want to see, like, their equivalent of 5Ds. For now, I'll take the remake. I'm interested to see where this goes. Yeah, I'm really interested to see where this goes. So yeah, see you hopefully this time next week, where we're going to be talking a bit more about Vanguard. So yeah, any of yous out there that want me to talk about Vanguard more, well, get used to me talking about a lot of Vanguard from now on.